Hey guys, if you can see this, I know that the recording usually starts before before I can see that it works. So good morning or good afternoon, wherever you're tuning in from. I'll just make sure that this is actually streaming live to Facebook. Yep, I think I can nearly see my own face. That's good. Yep, we're on.
I just got a notification on my phone that you're starting a Facebook Live, so that's great.
Awesome. We're definitely live then. Awesome. So I will start the recording. Brilliant, just to make sure. So guys, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're tuning in from. And thanks again for all of your really nice feedback since we've been doing some of these Facebook Lives weekly. So actually I should introduce myself first. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Dani Catania. I am a dietitian. My background is in sports nutrition, but I also have a very specialist interest in good gut health. And that's really what we're talking about on this live today. Now, I've just realized that my name is not on the screen. So let me just fix that. There we go, just so that there's no confusion. There we go. And I have I call him the big guns. We've got the incredible David Despain with us. He is the Director of Scientific Communications and Affairs. Yep, there they are, over in our home office in Gilbert, Arizona. And I always like the conversations that we have. And so today, is going to be more of a conversation between the two of us because we always have questions around fructose. We always have questions around low FODMAP diets. David is the guru when it comes to fructose and the science behind fructose, and especially hailing from his background as a certified food scientist. And for me, I really wanted to chat a little bit about low FODMAP diets because really, I'm based in Melbourne, and low FODMAP diets, the concept was born here in Melbourne. And so I feel like, we've got our specialties that really complement each other. So thanks for joining us again today, David.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's always my pleasure. All right, so we'll kick it off then. So David, you and I were talking just before we got on, and so I think there's some confusion around what a low FODMAP diet is. So let's go through that a little bit. So a low FODMAP diet, the history or some of the background that I think you should know about a low FODMAP diet is it was created to manage some symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome, right? So, you go through all the tests with your GP, there'd be no, they test for celiac disease, they test for inflammatory bowel disease. And when there was none of that, the resulting label was IBS or irritable bowel syndrome with no real strategies to manage that. And that some of the symptoms can be quite annoying, then they can be quite crippling. We're talking about things like bloating and pain and fluctuating bowels and very unpredictable bowels. So it can be a little bit embarrassing in some situations as well. And so what basically some very smart dietitian, her name was Sue Shepherd, really started to look into these FODMAPs. And the FODMAPs, this coin or this acronym came from it stands for fermentables, oligosaccharides, disaccharides, monosaccharides, and polyols. And those really, so some examples of those, they're all short chain carbohydrates and simple sugars. It's a way of classifying them. Most importantly, so things like, for some people, it's not all of them. For some people, it might be lactose, which is a disaccharide. For some others, it's a monosaccharide like fructose. That's where fructose comes in. For some people, it might be fermentables like inulin or fructans, which come from onions and wheat. So those are some of the the common foods. Polyols being sugar alcohols, so things that are naturally found in things like cherries, apricots. These are all very natural carbohydrates and sugars. And most importantly, these are all they're all prebiotic fiber. So these carbohydrates and sugars are actually very important for long-term good gut health. And so part of the management of irritable bowel symptoms is really working with a dietitian who has a specialist interest in this area. And what they'll do is they'll often put you on a very strict low FODMAP diet to begin with. assess your symptoms, and then be able to bring in. So the whole goal is really to assess your own personal tolerance with some of these sugars and carbohydrates, right? So it's all about being able to bring in some fructose if that's your issue, and work out how much you can have before it's kind of a trigger for you. Or if it's lactose, how much lactose can you have before it becomes a trigger for you? And so it's really important to start. I always emphasize it's really important to not stay on a low or zero FODMAP diet for your whole life, because you'll have really terrible gut health as a result. So that's really the background behind sort of a low FODMAP diet. And we're going to talk a little bit about some strategies to manage how Isagenix can still fit a low FODMAP diet with some clever suggestions, and really understanding, where they are and what different issues are. So David, I'm going to bring you in now. And I think I know fructose is always one that there's a lot of people who, in following a low FODMAP diet, will choose low fructose foods. Do you want to have a chat before we sort of go into some of, why that is? Do you want to talk a little bit about fructose? There's some controversy around it, why we use it in our Isagenix products?
Yeah, sure. There has been some controversies around fructose. There's been plenty of headlines, plenty of inflammatory headlines that say things like fructose could harm your liver, or fructose can do this or that. And there's particular scientists who have even called fructose toxic, made it sound like it was as bad as alcohol. It's important to see this in context. So I always like to remind people that nutrition, kind of like medicine, is about dose. At a certain dose, something can be good for you, and at a really high dose, it can be bad for you. Even water. So even water is something that you need in normal doses. It's good for you, but if you get too much, then it can be potentially harmful. So I like to think of nutrients in that way. Every nutrient has its dose. In terms of fructose, when studied in mice, particularly, what they're doing in these studies is that they're giving mice very high amounts of fructose that are totally abnormal. It's not something that you or I would ever do. And what they find, and in those mice studies, they're giving them fructose as a single nutrient in absence of other types of carbohydrates. And mice have a different physiology than humans, and are not able to handle that load of fructose, especially in absence of other types of carbohydrates. Fructose is a type of carbohydrate that actually has to be metabolized through your liver. And so in these mice, what they find is that by giving mice large amounts of fructose, they can cause insulin resistance in mice, basically a model of diabetes, and make them fat with plenty of liver fat. And so that's basically where a lot of these inflammatory headlines come from. But you need to put that into context of other types of studies where they've also taken fructose in low amounts, in amounts that are normally found in, for example, an apple, about 8 to 10 grams of fructose. This amount, in combination with other sources of carbohydrates, especially in humans, we handle this just fine. It's in fact, the studies in specific randomized controlled trials where they've looked at fructose in comparison to other types of carbs in these amounts, on a low calorie diet, on a not in excess of calories, meaning like on a weight loss diet, they found that fructose in these amounts actually is superior to other types of carbohydrates for helping to improve glycemic control. So fructose versus other carbohydrates like glucose or galactose or or maltodextrins, etc. So I think it's important to think of that in its context. Like fructose in high amounts, especially in excess of your calorie needs, can, like other carbohydrates, lead to weight gain. Now, in super physiological amounts used in my studies as a single carbohydrate can also lead to increases in visceral fat. That does not mean that every amount of fructose is potentially harmful. No.
Yeah.
So I think it's just important to get that controversy laid out there. And what you'll find is that nutritionists who have looked at this very closely, I'm thinking of the studies done at University of Toronto, where they've studied fructose and glycemic control. They have found that having fructose in amounts that are normally found in fruit can actually be supportive. Now, as far as our shakes, we use fructose because if you think about sugar as table sugar, table sugar is sucrose, and sucrose is made up of half glucose, half fructose. The fructose portion is actually a little bit sweeter than the glucose portion. Glucose is a little bit less sweet. And so the fructose alone, when you're using a little bit of fructose in a product, you can actually increase the sweetness of it and use less sugar overall. And so it's important to understand that we have about as much fructose in the shake as about half an apple, and the rest of it will still be from some glucose. And it's not too different than having just a little bit of sugar in the meal. But at this level, on a calorie-restricted diet, you don't want to get bought into these types of controversies where people are saying that fructose will cause you to have liver fat. In fact, in our own studies, we demonstrated that on a calorie-restricted diet using our shakes that contain fructose, all of that energy was used up just as energy, and people lost visceral fat. So there's again, it's really important to keep it to keep things in context when it comes to fructose intake.
I love that, David. So just to summarize what you just said, because you said a lot of good things there, some very smart things too. So number one thing is a lot of the controversy comes from animal studies where the dose is way more than what we would ever get in a natural, eating environment, right? So that's kind of point number one. And like you said, any kind of wherever you are exceeding what nature's dose intended is where you're going to run into problems. So that's kind of, I think that's sort of point number one that you said. Number two is the reason why we use fructose is because it is a natural sugar and it is sweeter than glucose, and so we can use much less. To still have a really nice tasting, ice cream tasting smoothie in the case of the Isagenix shake. And in terms of actual amount, just to recap, so there was about half an apple. So it's around about 5 grams of fructose in a standard Isagenix shake. Is there anything more that you want to add? Because I think you really summarized that really well.
Well, just bringing it back to FODMAPS and there is such a thing as fructose intolerance that we need to address. There are some people who can be sensitive to fructose, especially if fructose is
greater amounts than glucose
as the single source of sweetener in a product. Now, if you have a combination of different sugars like glucose or carbohydrates like different types of starches, then it's a little bit different. It's with people who have fructose intolerance. It's usually, again, if there's keep in mind that intolerance is not the same as an allergy. Mm-hmm. Like an allergy is an actual immunological reaction. It's your immune system reacting to something like a protein that it's not used to, and causing a immunological response. Yeah. Whereas an intolerance is just how well you're able to digest a certain food. And oftentimes with these fermentable carbohydrates, like the ones that Dani had talked about, including fructose, it might just be that you get a little bit of gas or bloating because of
intolerance.
Inefficiency of your microbes to be able to handle these sugars very well. With fructose intolerance, there's also the situation where your ability to absorb becomes an issue. If you're not absorbing fructose quickly enough, then it can ferment. But usually in combination, when you have a combination of carbohydrates, it's actually a lot easier to absorb fructose. Only really when you have fructose alone and in high amounts that this becomes an issue.
That's a great point, David. And that just reminded me. So like you said, so if usually with people that are that have found that excess fructose is a trigger for them, as long as they're having fructose in equal amounts with glucose is usually how they can best absorb that fructose and those carbohydrates. And so usually because there are other carbohydrates present in the shake, fructose may be less of an issue, right?
Yes.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about, so guys, I hope this has been really helpful. So let's talk a little bit about some practical suggestions. And thank you for sharing all that you did, David, and jump in if you've got any suggestions as well. So some of the things that we were talking about before. So let's talk about someone who is, who knows that maybe they're following a low FODMAP diet specifically around fructose. So some of the options that they may choose to start with might be something like a dairy-free shake, because there is the fructose has been swapped out for cane sugar, so there's going to be a little bit less fructose in a dairy-free shake. And of course, someone who might be avoiding who has no lactose at all, a dairy-free shake is going to be might be an option for them. For someone who is fine with a little bit of lactose, and I've shared this before, but I am lactose intolerant myself, and I'm fine with a standard shake. Again, it's just like you said, David, it's all about tolerance, right? And it's individual. An allergy is like if you have a crumb of, if you've got celiac disease, so which is obviously an allergic reaction to gluten, if you have a crumb of a piece of bread or a whole piece of bread, the reaction is going to be the same because it's an allergic reaction, right? But in the case of something like an intolerance to something, you can often have small amounts and sit within your personal threshold. It's often if those levels keep increasing, that you kind of, you break through that sort of personal tolerance level. So it is going to be a little bit of trial and error for each individual who's not sure about their tolerance to certain foods. So the other option that I was going to suggest for anyone who wants a slightly lower fructose option is going to be something like Isolene Pro. And Isolene Pro also has a little bit, because it's got the ratio of protein to sort of carbohydrate is skewed a little higher. There's going to be a little less of those fermentable type of fibers, which are really important for most of us. But for some people who might be having some digestive issues or having a little bit of bloating, sometimes Isolene Pro can be a better option. I've also heard of people making up their own shakes with 1 scoop of Isolene and 1 scoop of Isopro. So that'll still come in around that, that nice 24 grams of protein, but still have a little bit less carbohydrate and a little bit less of that fiber, if that is an issue for some of you. But the thing that I want to make sure we address before we wrap up this call or this interview is really that whenever you're starting, I always warn people that whenever they're starting a new diet or beginning and you're changing their diet, whether it's Isagenix or anything else, always expect that there's going to be some gut changes, right, David? You're putting in new foods, new fiber. There is a small amount of a probiotic in the shakes, and so all of those things are going to influence gut health. And so you may notice that that there might be a 7 to 14 days of this kind of transitional period where, then it might be a little more gassy, might be a little more, changes in bathroom habits, but know that it's usually transitional and it does usually lead to good long-term gut health. So, sorry, I know you're going to say something. I just kept talking, David. Sorry.
No, I was waiting for you to get done.
Sorry.
I wanted to. I think what you're bringing up is a really good point. Is that with a low FODMAP diet, as you said, this wasn't ever in a low FODMAP diet wasn't ever intended to be a long-term diet. In fact, it's more like a transitional period. One of the things that I'll remind people of is what is doing the fermenting, of a fermentable carbohydrate. It's the microbes inside us. These microbes, there's trillions of microbes inside you, me, and they and fermentable carbohydrates are their food. And we know that when you on like a typical Western style diet, when you're we see these microbes diminish in diversity, and that can actually be problematic to health in the long run. So having some prebiotic types of foods, usually if you're not used to prebiotics, prebiotic fibers, nutritionists generally we tell you to gradually increase, so that you begin to tolerate it better over time. And that could be a good recommendation with the shakes for a new person who's just coming off of a typical diet high in processed foods. They might come on to Isagenix shakes, and Isagenix shakes, naturally we put in some prebiotic fibers in there for long-term GI health, but it might take a little bit for people to get used to.
Yeah, so maybe starting on 1 shake a day or 2 half shakes a day, if that person might be have known sort of gut symptoms, can often be a good thing, or depending on the health of their own diet pre Isagenix, right?
That's right.
Yeah, good one. Well, David, is there anything else more that you want to add? I feel like we've really covered fructose and the low FODMAP diet, quite well. Anything more, and any last comments?
Yeah, well, I liked your suggestions. I think Isolene Pros is a good suggestion. In the shakes themselves, we have various types of fibers, and in the bars we have some polyols specifically that might be fermentable types. I'll remind that we never use any types of artificial sweeteners, and so this is why that's another reason why we use things like fructose and some other things like polyols, is because we avoid artificial sweeteners completely. And so it's important to have a little bit of fibers and some natural type sugars in the product to be a complete meal.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think just the last thing, just while we're talking about digestive health, and I don't want to open another can of worms here, but another question that often comes up is, when people start an Isagenix program, they can often end up having difficulty passing, their number 2s, right? And, it can often get bound up. I was trying to be really polite about that, and I was tiptoeing around some words that I really wanted to use. But I think one of the big things that, the 3 things to remember here are, water, making sure that you're drinking enough. So if that's 2 liters for some of you, 3-4 liters for some others, depending on size. The second thing is movement and exercise, right? Think about, your gut is a muscle. It needs to be moved, and movement really helps when it comes to good digestive health, and, you know, ease of going to the bathroom. And the third thing, and this is often where I feel that a lot of people fall down, is don't forget about fruit and vegetables as part of your meals and snacks when you start an Isagenix 30-day system. All right, so it means that you know, you're having, think about veggies. If you're doing 2 shakes, 1 meal, it's not enough just to have some veggies with that third meal. It really, those veggies and fruit need to be featured in some of your snacks as well. And I'm going to sound like the typical dietitian and say, you know, go for the carrot and celery and a hummus or something like that as your snacks. You know, reach for an apple or an orange, really great fiber. So I know that often comes up, you know, in this topic as well. So just wanted to nail that one while we were talking about it.
Yeah, well, while you're on that topic, I want to remind people. So we talked a little bit about prebiotic fibers. This is a type of soluble fiber that's fermentable. There's 2 different types of fibers, and they act very differently in your gut. You have soluble fibers, and then you have insoluble fibers. Mm-hmm. It's the fermentable prebiotic soluble fibers have a certain function. They attract water. They help to form your stool, but it's really the insoluble fibers that that make you go. You know, it's insoluble. That's the bulking fiber. Now, related to an isogenic system, when you get on an isogenic system, one thing that I always find that people misunderstand is the term cleansing. They think that they're going to go to the bathroom, and so you get this situation where they get on Isagenix and they've already got some element of constipation and they're hoping to see it change with a cleanse. That's not the case, because it's not a colon cleanse. It's not that type of a cleanse. It's more of a fast. And if you have somebody who's already is experiencing constipation and they go on a fast where they've eliminated fiber for a day, it can actually get worse. So this is why one of our strong recommendations is to start out with shake days. And I'll add that if you are experiencing constipation, then you might want to add some more insoluble fiber to your shakes or within your meals of your shake days. So that could be fruits and vegetables. I often tell people to add ground flaxseed or a banana or berries. Berries have lots of insoluble fiber, so you can add blueberries to your shakes. This will help to correct those constipation issues or GI problems going before you ever do a cleanse day. You should be perfectly regular before ever attempting a cleanse day. So that's some extra advice for you.
Brilliant. And I actually thank you for bringing up the 2 types of fiber. I always describe soluble fiber as being like the clag. Like, you know, remember the primary school clag that the kids used to eat? I don't know. I had some in my class. But the soluble fiber is like the clag, and and any kind of roughage. So like you said, fruit, vegetables, grains, nuts, seeds, anything that's going to add bulk is going to do exactly that. It's going to form the bulk of your stool. So anyway, without getting too graphic, thank you so much, David. I hope this has been really useful. We ended a little in potty talk, but I think it's really important, right? So thanks again, and you are brilliant as always. Thanks again, guys, for tuning in, and I hope this has helped to answer some of your questions. I will see you on a live sometime next week. Bye for now.
Bye.